Hi and welcome to No Boundaries, the podcast, a podcast in which we, a mother and daughter duo, discuss all sorts of topics while also exploring our mother and daughter bond. And today it's not the two of us, it's the three of us. But just as I always say, I'm the mother and my name is Anusha.
And I'm the daughter and my name is Lulu.
And yeah, my name is Quinn Kinsella, and thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, you might think, what are these two women doing with a cis white man in the middle? That's exactly what this podcast is about. Lulu, I'm gonna let you do the introduction because he's your friend.
So this is Quinn. He became one of my close friends last year when we started the film program at CCNY. Shout out to BFA. And yeah, we basically have class together every day. And yeah, me, Quinn, and a few other people became this close friend group. And Quinn is a writer. He's a very good writer. He likes screenwriting for film, which is why he's in the film program. But now that we're in the program, he's also getting into like directing, editing, a bunch of stuff. And I'm sure he can do a better job at advocating for himself.
But the reason why we wanted to interview is because we, in this podcast we spoke a lot about the patriarchy, we speak a lot about feminism, we speak a lot about, our lives as women of color, experiences of women of color, black women, colorism. We've had all sorts of topics we discussed. We also talked about the male loneliness epidemic. We spoke about, check out our episode about adolescence, the series we spoke about. So, but we realized, if we speak about men so much, shouldn't we also at least once talk to a man? Not only speaking about, but with, right? And if we speak to men, let's speak to a really nice man. So what we want to discuss is, how is it possible that this cis white man is so nice?
That's a great setup. Thank you for deeming me as a nice person. That means a lot to try to be. Yeah, I think it all stems from this proclamation of just being a good person, being a kind person, and treating everyone with the respect and dignity that's their right, Yeah. I feel like this idea of toxic masculinity comes from, obviously, thousands of years of patriarchal designs made by men, but it's always to put someone down, to make someone feel less than or other, and that's never been something that makes a single moment of sense to me. It just doesn't make sense. So,
but was that something you were born with or raised with? Was it nature nurture? Because every man will sit here and say, I know, I think it's about respecting each other. It doesn't matter if you're blue, green, or white. Those horrible.
And for context, Quinn grew up in Rhode Island, small town. Like, you didn't grow up in New York City where you have all this diversity and all this culture and all these different sexualities and stuff. Like, you grew up in a very small town, but yet you came out of it super open-minded. And I guess I'm interested if it's due to how your parents raised you, or is it really a thing that you chose at some point for yourself?
Yeah, I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood, and in kindergarten I went to this public school that had a lot of the kids from my neighborhood that I had known since an early age. But when I was going into first grade, my brother, who has dyslexia, was given a chance to go to this charter school, Highlander Charter School in Providence, which is just a few miles away. And my mom took that opportunity because they had a great program to help him learn to read at a higher level. And they had a spot open for me as well. If your sibling gets in, it's easier for the siblings to get in. So I was admitted into this school, and I was one of two white kids in the entire class for
kindergarten?
From first grade to eighth grade, and then I went to the same the high school that they opened recently, that they had just recently opened, and so I was with this group of kids of all different backgrounds, mostly Hispanic, and I think that growing up with different experiences and different cultures and the way those cultures manifest themselves in daily life, like food and clothing and the way people talk, and it just gave me a window into all these different environments. It's because when you grow up with the same kind of people, it's very insular.
Yeah.
The people that were in my neighborhood, it was very, insular community, but this was very much the opposite.
And if you speak about what kind of community did you go? Because Lulu said a little bit like small town, but
Yeah.
what does that mean? Was it like blue collar or affluent or
Yeah, I would say I lived in like right in the middle between kind of this pretty poor neighborhood and this more affluent neighborhood, and it's you could literally ride your bike and see houses with plywood on the windows, and then see houses with freshly painted houses just a few streets away. So I grew up in this kind of... Rhode Island is the smallest state in the U.S., and I feel like all of America's people are really compressed into that state. Like, there's a lot of experiences and a lot of different kind of people from different backgrounds in a very...
small space,
Very
right?
small space, yeah. So,
and was it also diverse, like, or was it, as often happens, people of color at the poorer side and white people at the right side, or was that also mixed?
it was mostly isolated, for sure. Obviously, the history of zoning and stuff, it's very much still present.
The redlining, right?
Yes,
So
redlining,
so it's harder to get like a loan if you live in a certain neighborhood. It's harder even to get like a mortgage if you live in a certain neighborhood. Exactly. So you,
Absolutely.
yeah. And were your parents also like aware of that? Did they speak to you about that? Or when you went to that school, were there conversations? How did that go?
Yeah, going into another school with people that didn't look like me, my parents didn't really treat it as anything special. They didn't sit me down and be like, okay, these kids are good. You know, that would be like a kind of a toxic thing to do. It just it was a very natural transition, and that was just how life was. And I made friends with the people at my new school. I actually had I was just in kindergarten at my other school, so it's not like I formed these great relationships. But at this charter school, they had a lot of great resources for kids with dyslexia, like me and my brother had, and other learning disadvantages. So it was just a really good school with a really nice collection of teachers that really helped us.
But still,
Yeah.
even with different cultures, toxicity is not only, especially toxic white men.
Absolutely.
It's not only a thing of white men. Unfortunately, how did that develop? And maybe Lulu, you want to chime in on that because you've known him now for a while. What's the secret there?
Yeah, growing up, there was obviously this idea of being macho, and growing up with those kids, gender was always very strict. These gender roles. The girls would dress very particularly from a young age, and so would the boys. And shoes were always important, and how you appeared to people was always important. But it never really was for me. I don't know if that's because I got all my clothes secondhand, and I didn't really mind not looking as
what we would consider normal or something. The norm, yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't really mind that.
How come? Because that's not, especially at a young age, you want to belong, you want to be part of a group. So
were you like never scared to like get bullied or to like...
The weird thing is, what I was always surprised about is I was hardly bullied at that school, which is great because I would always have a book in my hand. I had secondhand clothes and dirty,
like the stereotype
dirty
high school movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bullied
It's like,
kid.
hey, book nerd, show me a locker, call it a day. I was never bullied. Everyone was very kind, which I think contributed to this because, kids that are bullied, especially young men, kind of harbor this self-hatred that they act on in violence to others and putting other people down. And I never experienced the violence towards me in form of bullying. So I think that's also a big part of it.
And also at home, because you had an older brother,
Yeah.
so was he like you, or did you have like a more classic white male brother? How was that dynamic?
My brother was... we're very different. He is very scientifically minded, and he majored in philosophy and mathematics.
Wow.
So I'm the creative one, and he's the not smarter one. He's, I don't know.
The more scientific, like, scientific.
Yeah, scientific one. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, we had a classic younger brother, older brother relationship. He would give me a hard time and stuff, and I was annoying as the younger sibling. But there was always, I feel like we moved around a lot when we were younger with my dad. my parents were divorced, and I would move with my dad to different places to find cheaper housing and stuff. So I lived in about 8 different apartments with my dad, and my mom remarried once, and I moved to Massachusetts for a year, and then divorced, and then I moved back.
And you stayed at the school at that time?
I stayed at that school. It was like an hour commute every morning, which is ridiculous for like an elementary school.
Wow.
But I remember reading to my mom and my brother on those car rides, so that was good memory.
And she would drive you every day?
Yeah, every day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Commitment.
Dedication.
Is he toxic? That's actually...
Is he toxic masculine?
Yeah. He's not actually, which is interesting. And I feel like the fact that we were moved around so much, and given these different experiences, and we lived in a lot of different neighborhoods with a lot of different kind of people. And my brother is a very outgoing person. You know, he would walk up to people and just start conversations, which is the opposite of me. I'm very, I'm a shy person. So we're different in that regard. But the moving around kept us close, I would say, and kept our differences far apart, because at the end of the day, we were brothers, and although we were moving around and we would shift between our parents' houses, we were the one constant. So I think that made it.
So your bond was always strong?
Absolutely, yeah.
But still, what I find so interesting, Luno, please interrupt me, or if you don't agree, what I've noticed is, especially if boys have hardships, they can also become more aggressive, or angry, or upset, or isolated, or that's why I find it so fascinating. Why didn't all of that happen to you? Parents divorced. I hear also moving around a lot, so that could also, harbor anger. Why is it with you that you became even more maybe open-minded and more understanding? Because I think that's just the key in, if we look at toxic masculinity in general, right? Society.
Right. Like, I understand that you grew up with a bunch of different cultures, which makes you more open-minded. But I think one of the few things that stays consistent, even if you go to different countries and are in different cultures and religions and communities, is toxic masculinity. That's everywhere. That's like, So I wonder, like, what pushed you away from that, especially if that was something that you were different in than other guys?
Male celebrities at the time. Like, the two that come to mind are Harry Styles and Timothée Chalamet. When I was like 12, 13, 14, these were people that were gigantic in the public eye. And Harry Styles was on the cover of Vogue in a dress, and he was very comfortable in his skin. And he just had an album out where Treat People with Kindness was on billboards all in LA and New York. And Timothée Chalamet took these really empathetic and interesting roles, like in Greta Gerwig's Little Women and Call Me By Your Name. These roles that were really vulnerable for a young man to take on. And the opposite of, this macho ideal that's kind of pushed to young men in media, which I was consuming a lot. Like, I used to watch Rocky and boxing movies and westerns and stuff. But this kind of new wave of feminine men for...
and that just kind of like hit home for you, or like it just clicked?
Absolutely, yeah. It kind of told me, like, there's not one strict way to be a man.
For sure. And it's interesting because Timothée Chalamet, for example, in his movies, like you said, is such a vulnerable roles and so not masculine, but yet he was basically getting all the advantages that masculine men strive for. Like, all the girls wanted him, he was rich, everyone's obsessed with him, and mainly girls. Like, every girl loved Timothée Chalamet, no matter, like, what culture they were from, or what kind of guys they like. These could be girls that usually only like really, like, buff guys, but then Timothy would be, like, the exception. So it definitely was interesting in that regards, too, where, like, all these masculine things that guys want, but then there's this guy who doesn't do any of it and is still getting those results.
That's interesting. I
always found that interesting.
I hadn't thought of that.
So but speaking of that, so when you got into puberty and, girls or boys, or both girls or boys, I don't know, became interesting to you, did that also help? Because, we had Timothée Chalamet, we had Harry Styles. Were you like the secret guy who would like swoop in and get all the pretty girls?
Absolutely not. No. I was still the Nevish bookworm in the back of the class. I wish I could say that I had their game, but I didn't. But when I started noticing people in that different way, I looked at a lot of. I went to the media to look at how you navigate relationships and crushes and stuff. So I watched all these romance movies. And
which were ones that you were inspired by, or that you were like, oh yeah, that's me? Was it also like something like Call Me By Your Name?
Yeah, Call Me By Your Name was a really big one for me. Just this Elio in that movie is an overthinker who just and a yearner who feels very deeply but is not very upfront with his emotions, and I related to that because I feel things very deeply, and I feel like I overthink things a lot, but I'm not always the greatest at reflecting that in my actions or speech. So yeah, Call Me by Your Name was definitely a big one.
As I understand, you're bisexual?
Yes, bisexual. Yes.
So I can imagine, in puberty, that's also not quote-unquote standard, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how, if I may ask, how did you find out about it? How did you feel? Was it something that was always there?
Yeah.
And also, do you think that is a strength of not becoming toxic? Or how does that relate to who you are as a person?
Yeah.
Does it even?
Yeah. I really don't think about my sexuality that much as a person. I'm in a relationship with a girl that I've been dating for 2.5 years. Love her, and shout out Alex. But yeah, I don't know. That's a great question. I don't think that bisexuality is an avenue towards not being a toxic male. I feel like a lot of gay guys are really toxic.
Yeah,
and that's because
they're still guys.
Yeah, they're still guys.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's a whole different topic we can get into as well.
Yeah.
No, that's an interesting question though. It never felt like this big epiphany moment where I was like, oh wow, I'm attracted to both genders. It was a very natural thing, and not something that I really had to reckon with, as a lot of queer people often have these reckonings and these awakenings. I don't know. I feel like I was, lucky in that regard.
Yeah, is that something that was like accepted in your community or by your family or your school?
Yeah.
Like, was that a hard thing to like come to terms with where you were from, or were people in your area like chill?
That's not something I necessarily ever like came out publicly. Like I don't think I've never like
spoken.
It's always come up very authentically in conversation. It's never like I don't think I've ever sat down with my parents and told them that, but it's known information.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's not something that I really felt the need to define as.
Also, not just because we're not to harper on it. And please, if you're like, I've had enough of this topic, please let me know. But just because we're speaking about masculinity or about why you're such a great man and such a great male cis friend. I'm just curious about how you develop as a man, right? Because it's so difficult for men to develop freely and be close to their emotions and be who they are. I think that's part of the problem. That it's still hard for any sensitive man, regardless of sexuality, to just be sensitive, to be who you are. So do you think, so maybe it's the wrong question, but growing up and being who you are, how did you were able to develop?
Yeah, my answer to that would be creative outlets. I feel like expressing myself creatively really opened me up and kind of broke this wall around me that otherwise would have contained all these emotions and thoughts and would have brewed into toxic masculinity. I feel like that's a lot of people either don't find the outlet in which to free this pent-up anger or anger that's often associated with masculinity. So I turned to writing. I loved writing different characters and getting into different people's headspaces, and I felt that was very freeing. I could make these characters interact in ways that I thought were authentic in my head, and then I could read back and be like, what is this? And I also felt less strict approaches to creativity, like poetry. I love writing poetry, just stream of consciousness stuff, just writing down whatever is in your head, and you'll look back on it and in a few years and be like, this is where I was mentally. And it's the creative outlets really allowed me to find myself and be comfortable in my own skin and in my own emotions.
I think
No, I agree. I think creativity is so important, and I feel like for a lot of like men struggling with toxic masculinity, I think you bring up an important point where like if you have an outlet where you can shy away from that or like be in your own world, that's so important. And I think in that sense you did get lucky that your creative outlet that you connected with happened to be writing, reading, and movies, because if you like movies and if you like reading, you're automatically like forced to deal with all kinds of characters and identities, which opens your mind up naturally. And I think it's harder because certain guys, their outlet might be, for example, playing basketball, but you can't play basketball without being in a toxic masculine environment, because that whole system is built on that. And it's like, because then you might have a sport. For a lot of people, sport is their outlet. But sport is like the rise on toxic masculinity. So I think it's definitely difficult for those who have different outlets to like, because it's like, or even if you like rap, it's like, some people like to actually rap, but then it's like, in order to make it, you have to start rapping like all these like toxic guys.
Degrade women.
Exactly.
Yeah, you have to be part of that horrible system. But what's so interesting, there are, I think, and that's why I'm so, inspired by what you say, there are different kind of, hopefully, pathways. Like, for instance, I was just reading about the documentary and book of Bruce Springsteen.
Okay.
Now, he's considered, right, he's older than, he's in his 70s now, but he was always considered like American, macho, masculine guy, right? But what's so interesting, he started writing because he couldn't connect to his dad. Oh. So he saw his father, who was like this blue-collar, hard-working guy who worked in a factory, who was always angry, who was always unhappy, who was only drinking, who would just sit the whole weekend with beer and leave me alone. And the mom would try to kind of like navigate around that toxicity and anger. And Bruce Springsteen, as a young child, because he said himself, I was too soft for him, he never loved me. And the only way he could protect himself was protecting his mother from the beatings. I mean, horrible childhood. And to kind of like deal with that, and because he was a sensitive guy, he started writing. And started writing about his father. And some of his first album, apparently, I mean, I don't really know so much about Bruce Springsteen, but as we know, it's really Americana, is about that pain. So that's so interesting that even like the straight, macho, rock and roll, classic guy found this outlet to at least handle the toxic masculinity he grew up with.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Interesting, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would like to think about for men that haven't found that outlet, what's the best route for them to take? Yeah, how do they find a way to kind of release this this anger?
I think watching movies is an easy way to like, and I think that's why movies are so important, and it's so important to me that movies go back to being more like, I guess, more about real life and more educational, because it is one of the few ways that even someone who has no kind of relationship to an experience is actually able to place themselves in someone else's shoes, which can be harder when someone's telling you a story or when you're like reading. But when you actually see it happen with the right music and the right edits, it's one of the easiest ways for even people who don't consider themselves to be creative or open-minded to still feel something, even if they can't explain it yet.
Yeah,
and
or
to
songs,
still really.
But
same with music,
But films even more, because it's at least an hour and a half, right? And it's visual, and you're like in it. Yeah. Watching movies is amazing in that sense.
Absolutely.
For sure.
So, and speaking of that, so I'm sure you've had friends who don't have a creative outlet. How are you friends do you have any, let's start with that. Do you have any toxic male friends like who you grew up with from childhood, you're like, I'm not going to let this guy go even though it's difficult, or did you end friend? Tell me about that.
Okay.
About that.
Yeah, I'll talk about this unnamed man, I'll call him Mark. But we became very close friends in freshman year of college. We would go out a lot, do a lot of stuff with a small group of friends, maybe 2 or 3 other people. But I would just hear about the way he would talk about girls he liked, and I would see how he interacted with people out on the street, and it was very off-putting. He was a good person, and he was a musician. I could tell that his music meant a lot to him, but just how he treated, it just came down to how he treated people. And
people or women?
Yes, people in general, honestly. But I mean, how he talked about women was really upsetting, and it's how a lot of men talk about women behind closed doors.
The locker room talk.
Exactly. Like all that gross stuff.
Which we kind of like accept,
Absolutely, you hear it in the movies all the time. And I could tell that there was a lot of pent-up anger in him, and it would come out in strange ways, like anger towards me when I didn't do anything, or like at one point I didn't text him back for a day, and we were gonna make plans, and he sent me this long paragraph. This like giant text saying like, you don't appreciate me as a friend, blah blah blah, just being really petty. And I don't know, it just was this manifestation of all this anger and just internal self-hatred kind of projected out in a very visual format and written down. And after that, I was like, I don't want to be friends with you. I just kind of cut it off.
Did you tell him that?
Yeah, I said, this is a lot and I don't want to talk for a while. And we never talked again.
So he basically responded to it like, well, like he listened right away, or was he being like difficult?
And he didn't even respond to it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then he called me later and he was like, you were one of my best friends and I don't know what happened to us. But yeah, he just overreacting to little things, and I don't really know how to paint this picture because every story has two sides, but it felt very unfair and very selfish.
It almost felt like you had like a toxic boyfriend.
Absolutely.
Like maybe he had some other issues going on too.
Yeah, we would make another thing is we would make these plans. We actually had made a plan to study abroad together.
Oh wow.
And then like a week before he needed to, I had submitted all my papers and he was like, I decided like I'm doing a different program at Baruch. And he was like, I'm not going anymore. I was like, what? And
a week before?
Yeah, and another.
Wow.
And we had talked about getting an apartment together sophomore year. And so I hadn't signed up with the dorms, with the deadline had passed. And he was like, I found an apartment with someone else. And so I had to like pay all these fees. So I don't know.
And he doesn't know what happened. He knows what happened.
Yeah.
He treated you horribly.
Yeah. So I think it's kind of this putting up blinders to.
Yeah.
Kind of.
It sounds like he had his own battles.
Absolutely.
But if we speak about toxic masculinity, right?
Yeah.
What, like, we spoke already about anger, frustration.
Right.
We all have to deal with it. Why do we think that, especially cis men, have such a hard time handling that life sometimes throws you curve, that it's not easy? What is it really so ingrained, you think, that men should just be successful and that's it, that if you're not, it's the fault of everyone else? Because I think, right, not to speak for Lulu, but I think for us women it's always like, I have to work harder, I have to do more, I have to be prettier, I have to be nicer, I have to be stronger, I have to be smarter.
Because that's the thing I talked to with Quinn a lot. Like, almost all the guys in our film class, they handle critique horribly. Like, whenever the professor tries to give critique, they can't take it, and they immediately like, why are they coming at me? Why are they attacking me? I'm like, they're doing what they're paid to do. It's just being a professor and giving you feedback. It would be bad if they were just like, yeah, great, keep going. Like, they're actually like putting in work and helping you, and you don't have to listen to it. And they're very like using words like, why are they attacking me? And I'm like, huh? So you're just getting feedback. And I think, and I was telling some of them like, hey, like you don't have to take the feedback. Like you can just throw it in the garbage. You're just offering the perspective. You have to do anything with it. You can choose to take it. And now some of them are like running with that, where they're like, you don't have to take the feedback. But I'm like, wait, you're missing the point.
No, but
I meant it as in like, don't take it so personal. Yeah. And now they're taking it like, oh yeah, you're right, I shouldn't even listen. And it's like, oh, I didn't say all that.
No, but that's my question. Even above that, why? So what happens with men, and at what age, or if you have to answer this.
Yes.
That cis men think, I am the star. What happens in society? Because as a woman, you learn really young subliminally, you're nothing, right? You learn that really, really young.
Yeah, men don't learn that.
So where do men pick up, I'm the king?
That's a great question.
Everywhere.
But where? So what am I missing?
Already in movies, it's some old ugly dude who gets the hottest girl ever.
Yeah.
That's already like, what? And I feel like it's to the point where if you see an old ugly guy with like a young hot girl, you wouldn't look twice. But if you see like, quote unquote, a girl who doesn't fit societal norms of like being pretty with like this super hot fit guy, that's when people are like, how the hell did she pull him?
Yeah. So subliminal. So the message subliminally as a child is already, you'll be fine. You're the star. You deserve the best. You deserve pretty girls. You deserve money.
Yeah.
You don't deserve critique.
And I think a big thing is the boys will be boys. I think that's one of the biggest things.
Yeah.
Men don't learn to take accountability ever. Women always learn how to like act in a way to avoid for a guy to act this way. And you know how boys are, and you know what boys will do. So we learn to dress like this, to act like this, to talk like this. And we learn that if a boy reacts that way, that's how guys react. So just ignore it. So this whole like dancing around this scary big thing, which is just a man. And obviously you never get called out, and you grow up always getting away with these things. They're never being able to take accountability. So, but it's only going to get stronger.
So what you're saying, Lulu, because I was raised that way. So my mom, who is a feminist, a scientist, worked her whole life. I mean, even in Baltimore, when I worked at like this amazing institute for 6 months, she was like top of her field. And she's a feminist, but even she raised me with that's how men are. And she would work all day, cook for me and my stepbrother, and then if my stepfather would come home later, she would cook for him separately to like give him attention, right? So I was raised that way, but I hope I didn't raise you that way, Lulu. Or did you also from me, or just subliminally get that message like boys and people? And I'm also the mother of a son. Did I also fuck up my generation?
I wouldn't say fuck up, but I definitely grew up with the whole boys will be boys, and there's this like big like importance around male validation and about men that women don't have. And I can't pinpoint that you or my dad did that, but I wouldn't say that you guys necessarily went too far against it either.
Okay.
Like there was definitely certain things that were more normal for my brother to do than for me or Ella to do.
Yeah.
And it was almost like you guys had a higher expectations because we're women and because we should know better, which unintentionally still feeds into that same narrative where boys will be boys. Yeah. Even though technically you're treating us as better people. Yeah. But it's still, again, boys do these things, boys are silly. But you guys know better than that.
Yeah, that's
interesting.
Wow. Yeah. There you go, yeah. So that's how ingrained, how part of, and I would 100% call myself a feminist and a feminist mom.
Yes, absolutely.
And still, you see, how was your mom?
Yeah.
Is she my age? How old is your mom?
Yeah, my mom is 56, and my dad is only 1 year older. Yeah. I've had nightmares about being a father to a son and not being able to raise him. It's so scary. Being a parent is insane, but especially, I don't know why it scares me so much, but
I'm so scared too, especially because I am a lesbian woman.
Yeah.
And to think that I'm gonna grow up with another woman and thinking that the guy might be like, I need a dad, or this is not enough, or that they might become very crazy. Yeah, that horrifies me. Like, I'm scared to have a son for that reason.
Yeah. And that's a completely different dynamic, lesbian relationship, which is oh my gosh, we could talk. That's a whole different topic.
Yeah, very interesting. But to go back to your mom, how was your mom with that? Do you recognize what Lulu says with your mom?
I don't see that as, especially I don't know. It's
definitely 2 boys, right?
That's what I was gonna say. It's different when you're raising 2 sons.
But was she sort of like, that's just how you are, or was she holding? Did you kind of feel that she was like, no, holding you to like a more feminist standard?
I think she was. She was a bit stricter because my brother was, he's very unruly and he's very smart, but he just didn't know what to do with his brain, and he would act out and scare other kids. But in kindergarten he would like go up to boys and girls and be like, "This is the claw," and like put it in their face and like threaten them. Or, like, So that's so random.
Just get a claw.
So random, but my mom definitely, she was much stricter than my father was, which is obviously not how media wants you to view parents. So I would say she kept us in line. She was a lot stricter than maybe some mothers are, and definitely more than some fathers are. But she was always hardworking as a single mom. Staying late at work, but always being able to pick us up from school.
Right. And even if it's an hour away.
Even if it's an hour away.
She sounds incredible.
Incredible woman. Yeah.
And was your dad like teaching you guys how to be a man, or did you ever feel like disconnected because you were always like reading and being like a nerd, and was he kind of more macho, or was he similar to you?
My dad is very similar to me.
Oh, nice.
Scarily so.
So that definitely made like a difference.
Definitely.
In growing up as yourself.
Yeah, my dad is just such a kind, sweet person, and I don't see any traces of that toxic masculinity thing in him. Like maybe I could see some in myself, but not in him at all. He's just such a genuine person, and he's a big movie lover. He loves reading. He's a big music fan. And I couldn't pinpoint. We can have him on the podcast.
Okay.
Right, he was just here. He just spent the weekend with your dad.
Yep, I spent the weekend.
Yeah, let's do that. That's great. Because I don't know if my husband, whose dad is the right guy.
I would love to talk about that as well. But parents obviously play an immense role in this, and the sibling dynamics and the gender of the siblings, because when you're brought up with another sister or another brother as one of the same gender, it's very different. In a family that has daughters and a son, I can only imagine how difficult it is to treat them similarly, but also raise them with the right tools to navigate this world, because they're different tools you have to give them.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you don't want to give them. You want to give them all the tools and tell them what is for what purpose. Yeah, it's very difficult.
And it was also very different. Sorry.
No, go.
It was obviously difficult for us because my brother is like black and my sister and I are lighter. But then we're women and he's a man, so those are two opposite parts of marginalized communities under the same roof, and then my mom has both. So it's like, I can imagine that's also makes it really complicated to raise these three kids that have completely different experiences from society.
Yeah,
so,
in a white neighborhood and everything. And plus, there's also what's so weird. I don't know if I've ever said this in the podcast. If I did, I'm sorry. I'm gonna repeat it. Is that you think something magical is going to happen when you become a mother, right? You think, something in my brain is going to click. I'm going to be a mom. I'm going to be a mother. I'm going to be grown up. I'm going to be this. I'm going to and you're the same person with the same shit, like you were at 16 or 25, and now you have kids. It's so weird. I was always waiting to grow up. I was waiting for the grown up to show up in my brain, but you're just that same person, right?
That mother gene that we believe to have.
Yeah, no, you're just the same, but now you have children. Nothing clicks, changes, just have to deal with it.
Right.
And and that's not what society again tells you or helps you with, or
Yeah, similarly on the other hand, like as a kid growing up and getting to an age where you realize, my parents are just people who are also living for the first time and are also learning and making mistakes every day. Like that's also such a weird part of growing up where you have to like go from these like almighty people to them. Wait, they're just people too. Like I can't put all this pressure on them either.
100%. Yeah.
One big thing that a lot of white people love to claim is reverse racism. For those who don't know what that means, it basically is this idea that, white people also deal with racism. And to give you even a better example, I had several friends from the Netherlands who didn't pass their exams or their finals from high school, so then they ended up having to take classes at a special school, which is basically a lot of people of color in those schools. And I had several people who would tell me, I was the only white going to class, and people would make fun of me, and they would always make fun of me for being white, or say I make fun of my rhythm or my food, and one of my friends was saying, nobody wanted to speak to me because I was white, and I feel like in that sense I was the outcast, and I was being being the one made fun of, and the roles were reversed or whatever. So basically, as someone who was the only white person at the school of people of color, does reverse racism exist, and did you experience it?
That's very interesting question. Obviously, I want to talk about that girl that has no rhythm. That's just a valid observation by a fellow young person. So, that's not racism. That's facts. So she has no rhythm. That's established. I never experienced any racism, any reverse racism. That's a myth. I feel like I feel like that's constructed. I don't know. It feels very artificial to me.
And maybe even if there's some form of discrimination, right? That doesn't mean there's reverse racism, first of all. No. So of course kids can discriminate, if they're the majority. And you know what? And plus what I always say, because I've also had parents who came up to me about that. That's so temporary. Even if it happens, it's only going to happen in this school.
In this one classroom.
In this one classroom.
You have to take one class that you failed.
Society, as soon as you grow up and you start, in the job market or, anywhere else, or God forbid, you have to deal with police or whatever, or other societal big constructs, it's all over.
I would say if I was ever discriminated against, that would just be bullying to me. I didn't see anyone's skin color as a factor in that.
you are now, an example to all the men.
Oh, it's scary.
You have to make it better.
2% of men that listen to us. We always see you.
What? No. So but then let's then to our listeners, because a lot of women listeners, a lot of women of color.
Yeah.
What do you want to say to those women? How to navigate, this toxicity of white masculinity and societally? What do you want to tell? Is there a secret you can share or something? What do you want to say to our amazing listeners?
I don't think I'm gonna crack this centuries-old.
Thousands of years.
Millions of years. Yeah. But I would say, if you can try to instill a sense of listening in a man, that's the first step. Like, men don't listen. We're grown up with the script of things to say and how to act, but nowhere on there is a pause to listen. So, and that's, I think, where a lot of men become self-obsessed and self-loathing, because it's very insular. So I would encourage having conversations with men, just like this one, even though I've been talking a lot, but having very open and deep conversations where a man can listen and learn different experiences and reflect on how he views himself and how he affects people in his life, I would say.
But how would you do that if men don't listen? Like, how?
Men don't listen, yeah.
Yeah, how would that work?
That's a great question.
And do you think it's worth it? Like, because I could see women being like, well, I shouldn't be responsible for teaching this guy how to have human decency. Like,
absolutely.
Might just move on to the next? Or would you say, like, no, like, it is worth it to hold on, and a lot of these men don't mean it. You just have to find that, like, click.
Yeah. It's a very fine line between trying to educate this person, spending your own time to try to set back this clock of that is the patriarchy. But there's a tipping point too where you can't keep feeding into this cycle.
Yeah.
So that's a great point to bring up. I would say just be honest. I don't know. That's it. I need to think about that for like a week.
Why don't you think about it? Yeah, and let's all think about it.
Please, yeah.
And that is something also we can discuss with your dad, Lulu, which is with my husband, because he does think about that also a lot.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
I love this. And maybe you also talk to your dad about it, because you were raised by a man who's sort of like that.
Absolutely.
And you raised two
Some
sons.
of the little voice memo will play in the
exactly.
in the mic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Quinn, I want to thank you so much for sitting here in my bedroom, on my bed, talking to us about toxic masculinity. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And as I always end the show, Lulu, I love you. Quinn, I love you too, I have to say.
Thank you.
And I love me.
You.
Yeah, and we all love you.